Wargaming have done something that I really hoped they would never do in World of Tanks, and of course they've gone and done it anyway, and it is of course releasing a Cold War vehicle into World War II without really changing the vehicle at all. And of course this thing, the Panzerjäger, or the NM116 as it's called on Cold War, and of course the NM116 Panzerjäger, of course being the American Tier 8 that's been recently added into the game with the latest update in the game, and it is, to all intents and purposes, really strong in the game. And that is because this thing has 280 alpha damage, and for the majority of medium tanks, for the majority of tank destroyers, a tank with this amount of alpha would probably reload in about 7 seconds roughly. Typically medium tanks at this tier are nowhere near the level that this thing is at in terms of its DPM, and of course this is a tank destroyer, so it gets all of the benefits of being a tank destroyer while having all of the benefits of also being a like a medium hybrid light tank. So you can go 61 kilometers an hour. That's without any speed boost equipment. Of course you can put that on if you want to. This thing is like the tier 8 version of the Hellcat. So if you know anything about the Hellcat, this is literally the tier 10 version, or the tier 8 version that can come up against tier 10s. It has absolutely no armour, so many of you will probably be thinking, well, it gets penned by everything, so can't be that good. Well, yes, if you sacrifice the armour, you tend to gain a ton of extras, and you can see that here with the pure accuracy of the tank. These are without any, with fully equipped out with all of the perks, stuff like that. These are the values that you got. So you got a 5-second reload to do 280 alpha damage means that your damage per minute is 3,363. I mean, if we compare that to some tier 10 tanks, I mean, we can just pull up one here. It's absolutely disgusting because, you know, an E4, for example, probably not the best kind of relevant, but you can see, basically, E4, a tank destroyer, has 3,094. That's because it has high alpha, so it's not reliant on its damage per minute. But maybe if we took a medium tank at tier 10 and had a look at the M48A2 pattern, you can see here the damage per minute is 2,900. Now, this is a tier 10 medium tank, and it has less DPM than this tier 8 tank destroyer, which is absolutely disgraceful in my personal opinion, and it is completely down to the fact that they've basically taken a Cold War vehicle that's supposed to compete against Cold War tanks, including new tanks, blah blah blah, and they've basically dumped it into World War II, thought very little about the actual balancing capabilities of this, and to all intents and purposes it's pretty broken, and in game it's so easy to do damage. Yes, you have low hit points. I mean, that's not really even that much lower than some other tanks. I mean, the T28 Prot here, for example, has just 50 hit points less. So, and I would 100% rather play the Panzerjäger here. And in an experienced hands of any player that has played World of Tanks for any period of time, really, this tank is going to be superb. It is going to be fantastic. And I played the first couple of games with absolutely no premium ammunition because this thing gets 268mm of standard penetration. 262, sorry. So let's not overamp it. But you can see tank destroyers at this tier don't even come close. The nearest one, TS5, has 248. So this thing has 20 more penetration than any other. I mean, you look at tier 10 mediums, as we've already talked about, you can see they have literally less penetration bar the M60, but this tank is 2 tiers lower. And you can see on the premium penetration, it's even pretty much the same as some of these tanks as well. So it's effectively a tier 10 medium tank gun on a tier 8 tank destroyer that has basically all of the benefits of camo, concealment. Of course, as you go down in the tiers, you get the kind of more effective having great vision range and great concealment is, because everyone else has less view range, and this basically has superb view range, 473 meters. This is of course using all of the perks and of course all of the equipment that you can use, advanced optics, advanced concealment. I'd 100% run it, but without further ado, we've talked enough about the tank, why it's broken statistically. Let's actually have a look at some gameplay of how this thing is so broken and why it probably shouldn't be a tier 8. The first replay we have on World of Tanks is on Highway, and this is going to showcase literally everything you need to know about the tank. You could just watch this replay and you're going to see exactly how powerful this thing is. I've played probably about 4 games in this thing, and yes, it is enough to already give my solid opinion. I could play tens of more and the damage results would go even higher. This thing is crazy, and on Cold War, this thing's fantastic, superb, really, really, really strong, and it's the exact same case when you take it onto this game mode. And you'll actually notice that when you're using food in this vehicle, that the reload goes from 5 seconds down to 4.7 seconds, which means you're doing 280 damage every 4.7 seconds, which means tanks like the Tiger get ruined, and I mean ruined, just like you've seen there, and that is why I think that Wargaming have really messed this up so badly. So yeah, I guess we'll have to see how this game really progresses, but hopefully this doesn't set a precedent from Wargaming that they'll just be reintroducing tanks that they've already made on Cold War and then saying now you have to pay £40 for the most aggressive, the best, the kind of the tank that are going to be doing the best in the game, and you basically have to pay for them like a super pay to win premium game, because yes, we've had that in the past and they've kind of done all of the balance changes to counteract the fact that there were really, really OP premium tanks back in the day, and they've kind of balanced all of the tech tree tanks to kind of keep in line with it, and I think that that was a good change, and they've kind of just then turned around and stabbed us in the back with tanks like this. Hopefully, maybe I've got the tank completely wrong, maybe it isn't as OP as I'm saying, but you can see here how quickly it's reloading. And remember, every one of these shells would be 280 damage, especially when you're playing at tier 8, because this is a tier 10 game. There are tier 10s everywhere around at the minute, and of course when you're playing in a tank that basically doesn't care whether it's in tier 10 or whether it's in tier 8, and actually if you can be in a tier 8 or a tier 10 game, you're actually able to do more consistently more damage, because effectively you have more hit points to like tear off of the enemy team, which is, you know, kind of perfect. And although we've done nothing in that period of time where we haven't managed to find the Tiger, just purely because the team are in this kind of central line and there's nowhere to really push up from this point. Of course, I only have 1,100 hit points, so you can't be super aggressive. The only kind of downfall of the tank is that you can't just go out and sit in front of everyone, but then again, that would make this tank genuinely the most broken tank that Wargaming have ever introduced in the game. But nonetheless, I think you guys have got good opinions as to what you think of these new tanks. Sometimes I get it wrong, but I think I'm genuinely on the mark on this tank. It is superb in all regards. There's just nothing you can really say about it that is terrible, and even the bits that are terrible, like the armour, just don't really mean a whole lot, because you can still kind of out-trade a lot of the tanks that are going to be problems for you. And because that you have the DPM with the Panzerjäger, you can go out, you can deal your damage, and then you can consistently track opponents at the same time. So not only are you going to be able to deal damage and get a ton of it, by the way, you're then also able to retrack opponents so quickly that you may as well just be an autoloader at this point. I mean, some of the autoloaders at this tier have less alpha damage and reload in about 2 seconds less, and that's the intricate reload. So, and they may take 30 seconds to fully reload, whereas you can basically have a autoloading kind of reload, and you can deal it so quickly, and that is why I think that this is going to be so dangerous, and why you definitely don't want to be sitting in front of this thing for any period of time. And the problem I have as well is that it's not just the fact that this thing has beastly DPM and all of that, it's also the fact that this thing gets ridiculous camo. You can see here, this camo is on a level with things like the M56 Scorpion, which is the tier 7 American tank destroyer that doesn't have a turret, doesn't really have a whole lot. It's not the fastest, whereas this thing gets all of the benefits of the M56 Scorpion, removing the kind of bad properties of it, and then making the DPM tier for tier just as good. So yeah, this thing if you've enjoyed the M56 Scorpion, you will absolutely love this tank. And in a second, I'm going to showcase why this tank in this matchup was kind of a good showcase of what this thing can do. Because effectively, at this point in time, the game is kind of lost. It's 11-6. A lot of the tanks are now moving up towards us, and there's not a whole lot that we can do from this point. But what you can do is use the gun depression that this tank gets, which, don't worry, it's not like it gets 3 degrees or anything, it gets 10 degrees because, of course, why not? And in this sort of scenario, playing up against a Draugun, there's nothing the Draugun can really do because, yes, that tank gets perfect DPM, but because we reload so quickly, there's no real chance that the enemies are going to be able to do anything. Now, we spot the M56, who is sat over there, we put 1 rounder into him, so that's 2 tanks destroyed in 2 rounds. Then the IS-6 comes around. Unfortunately, we hit the actual rear side of the IS-6, which is kind of unfortunate, but doesn't really matter a whole lot. But you can see just how quickly you can finish off a lot of tanks. Had we finished off the IS-4, we probably would have been able to choke out the Object 704, and then, you know, we could have tried to leave or do something else, and many other tanks just wouldn't have the DPM, or at least the reload, to be able to switch between all of the tanks, whilst also having the amount of damage that you have per shell to kind of warrant playing up against these tier 10s and still beating them. So we managed to do the most amount of damage in this game, and of course picking up 4,175 damage in a 5-minute battle in a tier 8 tank destroyer against tier 10s. So we'll top off this video with kind of a section talking about whether Wargaming should keep doing this in World of Tanks, and actually why it's so frustrating when we just see Wargaming make one tank for World War II and then they just port it over as a premium tank for Cold War, and now apparently vice versa. So it almost seems pointless that they've separated the game modes if they're just going to use the exact same tanks and transfer them between the two. You know, just make it one whole game mode and make a decision as to the true vision, because it just seems like they're kind of trying to farm as much money off of people. And actually, if they were to do some kind of system where you could buy the first tank that you have, maybe you buy the NMS 116 on Cold War and you get it on World War II, that would be a good idea. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be in the minds of Wargaming. They're probably thinking $signs, and you can sell the exact same tank where you've invested the same amount of development into the tank and get double the profit. So that's unfortunately the way that Wargaming are going. Yeah, it's just kind of frustrating, but nonetheless we're able to kind of showcase this vehicle. I am probably going to buy this. Now, am I going to say that you guys should buy it? It's one of those things where if you want an overpowered premium, and I'm going to say this is overpowered, I think it is strong in so many different departments, and not just strong but excellent in so many departments, that it's got to be one of the best in the game at tier 8, at least in tank destroyers. Maybe not overall, but I mean even then it's one of the best. So if you really do want a new premium tank that's solid, that's going to be super good, and you can get over the fact that you'll get penned by everyone when you get hit, then the NM116 might be for you. Now, there are some problems that I'll highlight first off before you make the final decision as to this tank. And of course, if you've already made your decision, let me know in the comment section down below what you think, whether you change it, whether I'm completely wrong. But the one thing is, you know, the reverse speed of the tank is not particularly great, as like the Hellcats. It's kind of slow, but you're better off just going forward and going down and putting yourself in a position where you just rotate the hull of your tank so that your escape position is where the front of your tank is, so you can just quickly escape. It is not a problem. You just have to think about it when you're playing in the game, because sometimes you can get caught out by the reverse speed, which is pretty bad. But overall, my opinion on the tank is that this thing is super good. It's really consistent. I think that this tank is probably going to be something I might even look to 3 mark, which pretty much says a lot, because I don't really play an awful lot of the same tank, because I'm always having to swap between all of the various different tanks and go for gameplay so you can actually see all of the different tanks in the game. So there's kind of that, and of course you guys can make your own decision as to what you want to do. Now, I'm trying to go down to try and get some extra damage. This projecto's kind of lunging into me. Hopefully he didn't actually get in the way on purpose, but you never know, sometimes people do. He then YOLOs into the T69 for some reason, but here you go. This is a auto-loading tier 8, and we're almost reloading for the amount of time that it takes him to actually launch out 2 of his clips. So yeah, you can see very, very strong in that department. And it's not like you're even slow. Like, you can keep up with a lot of the light tanks, which, I mean, means that if you're very flexible and you want to relocate, you can, which in World of Tanks is very rare in terms of being able to successfully escape. And because of the camo factor, along with the fact that you can also use some of the concealment perks, I would highly recommend using silent driving on this thing to just help you relocate easier and avoid getting detected. And that's actually a perk I think that is really undervalued in tank destroyers and tanks that need to relocate quite often. You can't use it really on light tanks because the perk doesn't actually work, because light tanks get that bonus anyway. But yeah, I really do think that you guys should invest your time, and potentially if you've been saving up your season gold or season pass gold, this is the tank to actually go for. It's very rare that I will tell you to get a tank, but if you have been wanting to spend a bit of money on the game, or you're kind of saved up a ton of money and you might want to spend like £5 on it to top up the gold so you have enough to get it, then I think it wouldn't be a bad shout. Alternatively, you can save your money, which I would also recommend. You know, it's just down to personal preference at this point. It's just down to your situation, but you can always wait for it to go on sale, because no doubt it will come out on sale at some point down the line, and I expect probably in about 3 months it will come on sale at some point, so you can always wait and pick it up at that point. But nonetheless, I think it's really important to talk about these things. I definitely don't like the fact that this has been introduced. I love playing it. I think it's a brilliant tank. It's definitely a bit too strong for the game, but overall, if the game continually adds tanks like this, it's going to be really struggle to actually play a lot of the tech tree vehicles, and actually a lot of the old premiums that are already not particularly amazing. Things like the Super Pershing, I mean, even things like the 112 and stuff that they featured on the bundles recently, they're all going to be a little bit painful to play. But you can see here a fairly fantastic, good game. It's nothing special, and you know, we didn't really have to work a ton to be able to pick up 3,200 damage, and of course you make a ton of silver, you make a ton of XP, and it is one of the nicest tanks I think in the game right now. So let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. Hopefully that was a good review. I mean, there wasn't really anything to review. It's just a case of, this is an amazing stat tank. It plays amazing. There you go. But other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Don't forget to check out the Scorpion G review coming tomorrow as the recording of this video. So if you're watching it now, the review will be tomorrow for the Scorpion G, which is the free tank for this season. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.